G'day folks, it's Phil here from DBS Down Under. I know it's been a while, a lot's happened since the last time you guys saw me. Coops and I did actually record a podcast, but I kind of fucked up and corrupted the file and stuff like that because I'm a genius. I'm a technological wizard. So that's not coming out. I'm going to briefly rehash what we said in that. Some of that was like a recap about regionals. Some of that was a run through the Ultimate Box. And some of the stuff that we said about the Ultimate Box would have been game-breaking information had we actually released that podcast, it turns out, because we talked about one of the decks that a couple of people from PPG ended up piloting sort of a different version of what I had in mind. Actually, no, I shouldn't say that. So they basically ended up playing the same thing that we hypothesized. And it's kind of become the new hot thing. So I want to talk about it, and that's of course the Vegeta lock deck. But regionals happened in Melbourne. Of those of you guys who saw me on stream who came and said hi to me, obviously that was a fantastic experience. Sydney is happening in 2 days, so I'll be there of course. And once again, please come say hi, have a chat. Always happy to talk to people. It was really incredible how many people came up to me, even people who made it into the top cut where I didn't, who said, I was using, your lists with a couple of changes, or, some of you, whenever I'm thinking of new decks, I go and watch your channel and look what you've put up, and I basically start from there. So that was really cool. Obviously, we didn't put out as much Colossal Warfare content as we wanted to. I ended up being a hell of a lot busier than I thought I was going to be, and Coops got really caught up with stuff as well. So it turns out when you work, it just takes over your life sometimes. Happens, nature of a career. But back to DBS, there's regionals coming up in a couple of days, and actually before I talk about that regional, I want to talk about Melbourne Regional. I played Mirror. I'm probably going to be playing I'm not going to be playing one. I'm going to talk about decks that you should be playing on Saturday, and then I'm not going to play one of those decks on Saturday. Not because I'm some sort of off-meta champ thing. I kind of operate in the anti-meta rogue side of the game. Even though I do make a lot of the meta decks, I don't actually. There's certain playstyles that I really enjoy. That's kind of why I do better in other card games where those playstyles are actually a bit more prominent. But I kind of force myself to play them in DBS because that's what I really enjoy playing. And I don't really enjoy some of the mechanics that are out there right now. I would have played this Vegeta deck had it not been spoiled early, I guess, because I actually enjoy the playstyle. This is quite complex as well. It's very similar to something that I've played in another card game, where you locked your opponent very early on and then didn't let them play their deck. But now that it's kind of a mainstream thing, I don't want to be playing mirror matches because I find mirror matches very boring. That's something I'm going to talk about for regionals. So I'm probably going to stick to the sort of thing that I did at Melbourne Regionals. What happened there was I had a great time, honestly. I kind of screwed myself over I made a really deep meta call by putting 4 Dark Karma in my side instead of a couple in the main board, and I main boarded 8 kill spell negates and then proceeded to play against no aggro for the whole day. I literally played against SS3 every single game, which meant that I had to throw game 1 so that I could sideboard in Dark Karmas, and even that then gave me a 70 to 80% win rate regardless of what variant of SS3 I was playing against. I had to then play 2 perfect games where I still had a 20 to 30% chance of just getting blown out. And then when I got to a critical game later in the day, game 1 and game 2, I drew my whole cell chain in turn on one of them was on turn 1, the other one was on turn 2. So I was a little bit unfortunate, but I had a great time, messed around and met a bunch of people, like I said. So Sydney Regionals. So for a lot of people, this will be the first time they've ever gone to a regional tournament. For a lot of people, they'll be flying in. One thing I can say, having come out the back of Melbourne Regionals, is that it's going to go for longer than you think it's going to go for. Full props to TAC Games for the way that they managed to handle the overload that they got at Melbourne. But the nature of card games and these sorts of tournaments is that they are always going to suffer from organizational runover, and something's going to go longer than it's expected to. So if you plan on playing the whole day, you're going to be there probably for 12 hours, potentially longer than that, depending on how far into the night you go. If you get into the top cut, you will be there very, very late, right? So the Melbourne one I think started. I had the start time. It was quite early. It was like 9:30 or 10 or something like that, and finals finished like deep into the night in the early hours of the morning, really. And the same thing's going to happen in Sydney. If anything in Sydney, it's going to be, although it is capped at 120 players, which was a very smart move on TAC's behalf to prevent supply issues and all that sort of thing. It's also extremely possible that, even given that, I do actually know the location where it's at. I've personally run events there before. Thanks Windows for letting me know what's going to happen. This happens every time I record a video, is I get some pop-up on my screen. Anyway, live reactions. I have personally run events at Glebe Town Hall before, and it's a good venue, but it's kind of hard to explain, but like the nature of where it's situated, and will just mean that like there will be some sort of run over, no matter what happens. So come prepared. I hate saying this, but like take a fucking shower. It's so weird going. It just doesn't happen in any other facet of life, where you have to remind people about basic hygiene. And I hate the fact that I'm sort of doing a PSA here, but Lynx is not a shower. Like, love their brand. I don't personally use it, but sure some of the Yashays out there spray that shit all the time, getting on that Lynx New Zealand, Lynx Australia, to pick up their Rachel Peckhams. But I take like 3 shirts to card game events, right? Like I when I'm at work, I go a whole day. It doesn't make a difference. But the room that you're in is going to be packed full of people who are all nervous, anxious. People sweating. The temperature of the place is going to be a few more degrees higher than you are normally used to walking around in your everyday life. So it's going to get hot. Like, bring an extra shirt. Like, take a fucking airplane travel bag that's got, if you're flying in, take your little, I don't know if they still give out those free toiletry things in economy, but take your little toiletry bag with your deodorant and your shit, and just like at 12 o'clock head into the bathroom and just clean up and chuck another shirt on, and like, yeah, if you need to show the guns off to everyone while you're doing it, then by all means go for it, but just like make sure you're chilled and relaxed and you're hygienic for the full day, and that's actually going to do so much more for you than you think it is. Every tournament where I've ever done well at, I've always just been super chill about the whole day. The more stressed you are, the worse you're going to perform. That's kind of true for everything in life. So, yeah, we don't want to have performance issues, let's put it that way. So, talking about what are the decks to play? Well, obviously Ultimate Box has come out, and it's kind of introduced sort of 2 new decks into the game. Red Blue SS3 is actually, we're going to start with Red Blue SS3. There's kind of like 3 decks that if you're not already comfortable playing something else, or there's something else that you want to play just for shits and giggles, for memes or whatever, like Kefla. Kefla's actually a really solid like tier 1.5 deck that I've seen no one else play. But I'll start with Red Blue SS3. I pretty much just like lifted this list off. I don't remember exactly who it is, but it's one of the people who's recently won like a Gen Con or a Regionals or something like that. And like I got a different paper build for this, and I have a different build up on DBS. There's so many fucking builds of this shit, which they're just like 3 cards different from each other, and it makes no difference whatsoever. It's all about player skill, quote unquote. And we're going to talk about why that's not true at all. Like, yes, the same people keep winning, but it's not at all because of like an astronomical difference in player skill or anything like that. Okay, we just slow down. So Red Blue SS3 is really standard stuff by now, right? Like, you've pretty much just gained, like from the Ultimate Box, I'm pretty sure this deck got nothing at all. Some people sideboard into the Vegito. Some people play Seadra in the sideboard as well, which I don't think is such a bad idea either, in addition to, or instead of Tapions, if they mainboarded Tapions already. Anyway, so some people play Trunks and Kaba, some people just play Trunks. But the rest of the deck is really just, it's super vanilla by now. Kefla, I think everyone's come around to Kefla now as being like the card that you play at your top end as like your boss beater. It's just one of the highest value cards that you can have, especially in a deck that is not actually that good at maintaining hand size. It really relies on Chain Zeno to maintain any sort of hand size, which means it's not actually creating card advantage. It's just playing better from neutral positions than other people. In fact, actually, no, that's not true at all. SS3 is one of the worst neutral position decks in the game, but it never plays a neutral position because it has 3 more energy than the other person. There you go. That's what I want to say for that. But yeah, look, deck's really standard. Whether or not you want to play Mafia Bar in the main, or you want to play, I don't know what the fuck else you do. Like some lists are running, like this one here, are running 9 negates in the main. I think that's fine. I personally think Toppo's a 4 of in these decks just because you want a good way to use your energy off turn. I understand that if you've got like Raging Spirit plus the Mafia Bars and all that sort of thing, then like you tend to have enough ways of doing things, so it's fine. Flute, I reckon, is a pretty comfortable like 2 to 3 of in this deck. It's generally not a 4 of in this because you don't have as much stuff that you want to pick up. So that's that. Look, why does this deck actually work? It's because of Chain Zeno rather than anything else. What it means is that so Goku, SS3 Goku having access to 8 10k pumps is quite huge. And the extra energy means that you're never really playing from a neutral position. If you Chain Zeno your opponent, like all of the like deck building planning and skill and all that sort of shit just kind of goes out the window, and it's just like, what's the best top 5 that you can get compared to your opponent? I know there are people out there who are like, oh no, how well you play off those 5 cards like determines how good you are as a player. But that's true of like your opening fucking hand, right? So that's a stupid way of explaining. I've had that exact response thrown at me so many times, and it's just the most banal shit ever. Really, you're just rolling the die, right? Now, of course, if you have the same amount of life as your opponent, then your life is kind of like a bank of cards. Most people don't treat it that way, but it really is. When you Chain Zeno your opponent and you have the same number of life as them, and you start hitting them, they're picking up cards from their bank of life, right? But if they have less life than you, so if they're picking up those cards, and like the long-term card advantage is 0, but if they have fewer cards in their life, then they can pick up fewer cards from their life. Forgetting about whether or not they're closer to losing the game, they can pick up fewer cards. So the overall like long-term advantage they get in the course of the game is less, which is why when you want to go into Chain Zeno, you want to have some sort of life advantage, whether it's your opponent being at 3 instead of 4, or 4 instead of 5, whatever it is. You want that to be set up. Now, beyond that point, pretty much the position that you're in is really quite. It's sort of dependent on whether or not you top deck Burst Attack Son Gohan, which is such a shitty thing to be relying on, to be honest. As in, like, so if you're the person who's being Chain Zenoed, it's whether or not you top deck like Flute Fu, and or Burst Attack Son Gohan, because you have to regain card advantage in some way. And those are just like the best ways of doing it right now that you can do for cheap off the back of being Chain Zenoed. Obviously, if you are the person doing the chaining, off the top of the but you're playing with the Zeno and your leader attack after you play the Chain Zeno, because these decks don't really play anything that's relevant that costs 2 energy, unless they rip the Fu off the top as well, which is fucking bonkers. But you're playing with the Zeno as an attacker, and you're swinging in with the 15k leader. Like, if your opponent rips the bean off the top, they've got the bean off the top. That's it, right? So it's then like a question of the person who got Chain Zeno. I actually think they're in a universally better position than the person who is playing the Chain Zeno for the most part, because they're the first person who can regain the value side of things instead of the tempo side of things. So obviously the person who Chain Zenoed has the tempo advantage, but the other person has the value advantage. I think the value advantage is more important than the tempo advantage. Maybe that's because I'm much better at converting value into tempo than tempo into value as a player. Don't know. But I always feel more comfortable being on the receiving end of the Chain Zeno if I'm playing the mirror matchup. Controversial opinion, I know. So yeah, look, once you get that 5, it's really just like you're flipping the fucking coin, and it's like if you drew like triple coercion, flute, Raging Spirit, and your opponent drew like Kefla, double Toppo, Burst Attack Fu, you're fucked, right? Like your opponent just has so much more value in their hand, and regardless of how defensive you are, they're just going to blow you out of the game. So that's a thing. The other reason why this deck is dumb is obviously for Seeing Hit. For Seeing Hit is just a busted card. Has been since it came out. pretty much exclusively in the SS3 deck because you can play it, look at your opponent's hand, and untap three. Like the fact that you can untap three just makes it good, right? If you had to actually commit to it, then it would require some level of thought, but instead you just like jam it on four and then five, and so on and so forth. You can kind of like outplay the hit though, in a weird sense. If you're playing the mirror match, it's almost a mistake to play for seeing hit, unless you can read your opponent's cards very well. Because if you for seeing hit your opponent and they chain Zeno you, they're going to end up with 7 in hand on the like after the resolutions. So they're going to end up with 8 in hand after resolutions. So that's really good for them. So you actually got to be like the way that people lose the SS3 mirror, their red blue mirror anyway, is because they don't know when to play hit. And it's not as simple as just jamming it, because in that matchup, if you play hit and then you get chain Zeno, you may as well just kiss the game goodbye, because you are about to just get absolutely blown out by the amount of cards that they just got off the top. So yeah, like think about that. Of course, if you can hit and take away their chain Zeno and they don't have another way of getting another one, then it's pretty good for you, but just be aware of that. That interaction, because the cards that go to the warp are completely irrelevant. Don't relate to anything that you've done with the chain Zeno stuff. So just think about that. Anyway, this is probably the safest deck to play. Like it's the deck that if you're a competent player is going to get you into top 16. It's not necessarily the deck that's going to win you the tournament though. Why is that? It's because of this shit. So yeah, like I said, we sort of actually talked about this on the podcast, and then I fucked up and didn't upload it. So yeah, when I first saw Force Ejection, I think on the podcast what happened was Coops was like, "Oh, why is this an activate main?" And I was like, "Oh, so that you can use it more than once if you can cut the amount of energy that you have." And then he went, "Yeah, but you're never going to do that because you're just going to overwhelm it." And then like it was just in the back of my mind as like, surely there's a way that you can abuse this, and yes, there is. It's the Vegeta from the same Ultimate box. If we talked about the black cards first and the Vegeta later, I probably would have seen it instantly. But because we did it the other way around, it took me like a couple hours or something, and then I was like, oh, okay, actually this is really silly, isn't it? If you guys don't know, the interaction with the flip side of Vegeta, I'll actually just go pull it up here if I can. Is that because when he attacks, you pick up a life, but you pick up an energy, but you don't have to put it back down. So you can charge and then pick up, keep yourself at the same amount of energy, and then if you've got the Marseille, you can constantly lock your opponent down at different brackets of energy is what I call them. So you can either lock them at 1 to 2, or you lock them at 2 to 3, depending on what the matchup is. So if it's against SS3, you tend to lock them at 2 to 3 because they can't do anything at 3 energy for the most part. Against other decks, you want to lock them at 1 to 2 because, I don't know, because they can actually do stuff with 3 energy. The thing is that SS3 is not actually designed to play cards that cost 3. Pretty much the best that they can do is, I guess against red blue, there's an argument for you locking them at 1 to 2, so they can never properly chain attack you. They have to like hard cast the Trunks and then the next turn evolve it into chain attack Trunks. Whereas if they got 3 energy, they manage to go triple red, then you can lock them out of that. But oops, that's not what I'm looking at. This one here. But you can always just lock them out of red every single turn. And kind of make it annoying. But anyway, there's different trains of thought when it comes to it. Even if they do chain Zeno you, this deck has the capacity to draw so many cards that it probably doesn't actually matter. So yeah, just keep living your best life. Anyway, the idea of the deck is just that you lock your opponent with the Marseille, you keep them at 1 to 2 or 2 to 3 energy, and you recur the Marseille using Flute. You've then got the new Goten combined with Videl to give you a 15k draw 2 sort of combo. You play Genie blockers, you get out usually only one of this Bardock Ape per game, and because your opponent is limited to so few energy, they don't really have a good way of dealing with it. They can't play stuff without tapping out, and then you close the game from there. It's a very complex deck to play. If you haven't already picked it up, watching this video and then picking it up is not going to win you the tournament. I guarantee you that. Because like more lines than a BCF sort of thing. It is quite a difficult deck to pilot correctly. It does punish itself quite hard if you misplay because you are playing on such a small margin. Um, it is not an infinite deck. You must eventually commit to taking your opponent out of the game. The games can take very long. They are very tiring. It is exactly the sort of deck that I enjoy playing. It's a deck where your opponent is often put in a position where they are frustrated and they make misplays. That makes the game easier for you. That's all. These are all the things that like you want. Why this deck thrives, right? I mean, I built it because I wanted to annoy the shit out of people, and then get wins off that. It's just I don't know, you take it from someone who's played chess before, where I would beat people who were much better than me because I'd play complex positions that neither of us knew what we were doing, and they'd get annoyed because they want to play real games. I said I didn't want to play real games. I wanted to play bullshit where pawns were locked over the entire center for 25 turns. So this was sort of from that. It's similar to lock decks in other games, like bridge decks in Magic, Lantern Control, that sort of thing. Basically like that. Now, or Restore Balance if you're inclined to that sort of fuckery. Yeah, it's difficult to play. It's actually also kind of hard to put together. You need to have 4 Gotenks and 4 Bardoks. Gotenks are a little bit easy to get. Bardoks are kind of fallen off the market a little bit, so they're kind of hard to find. Foos are obviously everywhere, but they're just kind of expensive. Same with Progenitors. It's easy to get the Marseillans. Then the rest of the deck is fairly straightforward. It's just kind of the Bardock and the Goten, which can be kind of difficult depending on where you are. This deck does have hard counters. For once, I'm going to not say what they are because I actually want to do well on Saturday. And we have found like things that do very well against this, and we will be playing them. Obviously, I don't sell my ideas on Patreon or anything like that. So like maybe if you come and like pat me on the back hard enough on Saturday, I'll tell you what I'm playing before round 1. But yeah, it's this deck does have counters. It's not the best deck in the game in like a BDIF sort of way. It's a very strong deck. It has counterplay. It has moments of weakness. You need to know what you're doing if you're going to play. You need to know what you're doing if you're going to play against it. If you haven't played against it or played it, I recommend you put it together on Untap or Octagon or the new Lackey CCG plugin and give it a crack there. Otherwise, you are setting yourself up for a very frustrating day of playing against this leader and not being able to play the game. So just be aware that this is a deck. Last deck that I would consider playing if I was not playing what I am playing is the green-blue SS3 list. I think this is a really fun take on decks right now. Unfortunately, with the existence of Vegeta, this kind of drops down to like tier unplayable, but I want to talk about it anyway. The idea is just to set up the new Ulti-Box Vegito and then lock your opponent out of the game with KVSA, a bunch of Analyzers, Senzu Beans, stuff like that. Really, really solid stuff. Just kind of, it's a simple lock deck it's not a simple lock deck, it's actually much harder to play than Vegeta because it requires you to use your resources properly and predict when you need to commit the KVSAs, when you can commit the Senzu Beans onto your Vegetos, all that sort of thing. You have a rough time against Chain Zeno because they can obviously wipe your setup of barrier cards, and then you have to set the whole thing up again, which takes time. But the flip side of that is that you can run like green draw cards, like Nail and all that sort of joy in your sideboard. This deck doesn't have red, but it can sideboard into red very easily if you want to play Gohan and all that sort of shit. So yeah, that's a thing. Now, I'm sure I had Hirudegarn up here at some point, but apparently I don't. So I'm just going to like riff, and there's going to be nothing interesting on screen. So if you guys want to, I don't know, get a drink, go for it. When it comes to the aggro decks right now, you've kind of got 3 main choices, I think, that people are playing right now. There's an aggro Vegeta list where you don't play the Force Ejections, but you still play the yellow package. I think that deck's fine. You get the bonus energy, essentially, per turn with his Awaken side effect. So it comes in red, blue, and it also comes in blue, yellow. They're, I personally think, significantly better than the trunk. Okay, so I think in terms of the aggro metagame right now, you've got the trunks decks. They're not fucking storm decks. I've got here's a storm deck. If you guys want me to do a storm deck profile, you need grape shots, snow-covered islands. You need a lot of Poetic Rituals, Manamorphose, that's a key card. Serum Visions, Desperate Ritual, that's a really important one as well. And then nowadays we actually play the deck with Gifts Ungiven. So that's how you play Storm. It doesn't involve a Trunks leader though, and it actually involves a completely different card game that has mana. So no, you can't play Storm in Dragon Ball. Deck is not Storm. Stop fucking calling it Storm. Coops and I went on a massive rant about this on the podcast, so I regret not uploading that. But anyway, so the aggro builds. The Trunks one is the worst one by far. It is super reliant on going off early. It's super reliant on hitting those unyielding spirits, which, yes, it's easy to get because you draw a lot of cards, but at the same time, the deck kind of it runs out of steam super, super quickly. It gets destroyed by some of the SS3 builds. I just don't think it's a viable play at all. I wouldn't take that in. You've got Vegeta and Hirudegarn left. Now, this is a really hard distinction. Not many people have played the Vegeta versions of the Flute decks. I personally think the bonus energy that you get on the backside of Vegeta is more powerful than the Hirudegarn package, whereby you have access to the Minosha into Hirudegarn advantage, you've got the new 10k pump, and you've also got the Hirudegarn swing top deck one of your opponent's cards. I personally think that the energy charge is more useful and allows you to make more explosive plays. Occasionally, your opponent also just forgets that it exists, which is always great. So Vegeta and Hirudegarn can be played in two ways. There's the red-blue version, and there is the blue-yellow version. I'm personally a much stronger advocate for even though I think that the Goten Storm, quote-unquote, ideas are shut down by like Senzu Bean and Unending Awakening, which is a card that can be run in Baby and Kefla, which are both viable tier 1.5/rogue decks. So even though you can be shut down by those effects, you put less pressure on yourself to close the game out early. So I rate that quite highly. The flip side, though, is that if you're playing yellow, you do not have access to the chain attack lines, which I'm going to be very frank with the way that I say this, if you don't back your ability to play a fair game against people, then play Chain Zeno, right? Like, if you don't think that you're the best player in the room, then you should be playing Chain Zeno, because it puts yourself into a position where you and your opponent are playing murky games where you are relying more on luck than on skill. It is a problem. It can be fixed by removing one or the other card from the game. I don't have a problem with Chain Attack. I don't have a problem with Zeno. I do have an issue with the fact that they can be played in concert and create very, very degenerate board states. So if you don't believe that you are the best player in the room, or if you do not back your capacity to loop properly with the Vegeta build or the Hirudegarn build, running either... I mean, even if you're playing the red versions, you don't necessarily have to play Chain Zeno. The only reason that you would absolutely play Chain Zeno is if you believe, without a doubt, that you will play against large barrier decks. Yellow, of course, it does have ways of getting around these things, but it just kind of depends if you want to play the versions of the deck where you can think and win through I don't know, sequencing, or you just want to go, I press my button and now neither of us gets to play the game properly. So yeah, and I mean, it's especially true if you're playing Hirudegarn and you chain Zeno your opponent, and then you swing and you -1 card from them and you draw a card, and that's just very boring. I really don't enjoy it. Obviously, I think that what I'm going to be playing is going to do well against all of these decks, but that clearly remains to be seen. I made a poor meta call last week, last regionals, and I am prone to doing it again. So we'll see what happens. That's kind of what the meta looks like right now. I think there's space for like interesting little rogue decks, but unfortunately you are put into a position, no matter what you play, where you are going to be Chain Xeno'd at some point during the day, and you're going to have to take it on the chin and go from there. There's also like mono blue SS3 builds, but I don't think they're still as popular as like the red blue, and they kind of just get shat on by Vegeta, the lock build. So that's the thing. Anyway, that's kind of everything I got to say today. I really look forward to seeing all you guys on Saturday. Absolutely come say hi. And I don't bite unless, of course, I don't know, you've got, I don't know where I was going with that one. But I do not bite for the most part. And I'm more than happy to chat with everyone. That's one of the reasons why I do this, is to talk with people. I'm much more interested in the community side of things than anything else, even though I do sort of play the game competitively. So hopefully I do actually perform a little bit better on Saturday than I did in Melbourne. It's my home turf. I want to put on a show for everyone, so hopefully we'll have a good time. I'll be there with the whole gang. Coops will be there as well, so you'll be able to tell where we are. I'm sure like we'll be probably staying in the same place the whole time. And if you do want to come say hi, do it absolutely. And if you're not from Sydney and you're flying into Sydney, I also look forward to seeing you guys then, because of course all of our interstate competitors are also our friends and also part of our community, and we consider them to be close to us as well. So it's gonna be an interesting crowd, and probably the more competitive of the events between Melbourne and Sydney, but probably the most competitive overall between all of the regionals, just because, as far as I understand, people like top players from all around are flying into Sydney. So it's going to be quite heated. If you are sort of like a first-time player and you are from Sydney or something, or you're flying in on like a holiday and you're like, fuck it, I'll play children's card games. Yeah, it's going to be a rough day for sure. Like, you're not going to play against modified starter decks. That's for sure. But you are going to have a great time, and it's going to be a great day. So TAC will absolutely look after everyone there and make sure we're having a great time. If I don't see you in Sydney, I can at this point confirm that I will be going to all of the other regionals in some capacity. I may be playing, I may just be there, I may assist TAC Games with running the event, something along those lines. It depends what happens, depends what my schedule is like, and what can be arranged. So yeah, we'll see what happens. Come say hi, and come hang out with the boys and the girls, and yeah, hopefully you have a great day. I look forward to seeing everyone. Thank you for joining me. As always, I apologize for the hiatus. We will be doing a recap probably on maybe Saturday night. I don't know if I can be bothered staying up until 3, 4 a.m. After I inevitably go out and have a bit of a celebration afterwards. But we'll do the recap on Saturday or Sunday and get it out there as soon as we can. So see you guys then. Thanks for joining me. And as always, take care.